Welcome to Layer of the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, 5 of my favorite hair metal albums. Now, the expression hair metal, is it hair metal, glam metal? I think I'm going to make another video just on that topic, but just to keep things simple, let's just call it hair metal. So hair metal was basically 83 to 90, 91 when it started to go out of fashion, predominantly in the LA area. Some people would argue it's not even metal. I would say it's still metal. It's just sort of maybe drawing its influences from some different places. But so that's the parameters here for what I consider to be heavy metal stuff that was, a lot of it was on MTV and everything. So, okay, so five albums, my 5 favorite hair metal albums. My first one is from 1983, Quiet Riot's Metal Health. Now, I was a huge Ozzy Osbourne fan. Randy Rhoads, one of my favorite guitar players. For those that don't know, Randy Rhoads started off in Quiet Riot, but they released 2 albums with Randy Rhoads that were only released in Japan that were never released here in the US. So this was really the first proper internationally available Quiet Riot record, and what a lot of people believe kicked off the whole hair metal LA hair metal thing, even though Quiet Riot had been kicking around in the LA scene for quite some time. But I love this record. The title track, of course, is great, Metal Health. And what's really cool about this record, even though, everybody just says it's hair metal, it also has an influence, and this is really from Kevin DuBrow. If you listen to interviews with Kevin DuBrow, his influences are like the Small Faces, Humble Pie, Steve Marriott, Rod Stewart. So you hear a little bit of that influence in here, like in this song that I love, Don't Want to Let You Go. Love's a Bitch, has a nice kind of dark vibe to it. I Could Live Without Come On Feel the Noise. It was a Slade cover. I get why they did that, because Kevin DuBrow, he kind of sounds like Noddy Holder from Slade, and I do kind of like Slade, but that's a song I don't really ever need to really hear again. But Slickback Cadillac is a great song, and that was a song that was actually left over from the Randy Rhoads era. That was a song that he did that was on the second Japanese Quiet Riot record, and here Kevin rearranges it slightly, picks up the tempo a little bit, and it's a little bit more rocking and kicking, but great song. And then probably my favorite song on the record, the ballad on the record, which is Thunderbird. As a huge Randy Rhoads fan, Kevin DuBrow, by the time this album was, while they were recording this album, Randy was killed. And that song was going to be dedicated to Randy when he was still alive. And the lyrics are all about, leaving home, flying away. And he really wrote that for, Randy leaving, going to England with Ozzy, going on tour and everything. Well, then it took on a completely different meaning when Randy was tragically killed in the plane crash. And when I hear that song now, I just can't help but think of Randy Rhoads. If it can bring a tear to my eye. There's some videos on YouTube where people have spliced pictures of Randy with Kevin over that song, and it just breaks my heart. But it's just a fantastic song. Unfortunately, Quiet Riot would never really duplicate this success. I do like the next record, and I do like some of their other records, but really, to me, this is their best. And I really think it's because he wasn't really thinking, hair metal. He was using his influences. There were metal influences in there. There are some metal songs, but there's also some of this 70s rock influence that, for whatever reason, I think once the success of this album, maybe Kevin, the primary songwriter, felt like he had to sort of fit into the hair metal box and everything. And I think it really took away from them. Okay, so my next record from 1983. Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. Yeah, this is my favorite Motley Crue record. I do like the first Motley Crue record quite a bit too. Although the first Motley Crue record, at the beginning of the video, I said, should we call this hair metal? What should we call this? Some people call it glam metal. I don't really agree with that, although I would say the first Motley Crue record is kind of a glam metal record, but hey, that's for another video. Right now, Shout at the Devil, my favorite Motley Crue album. It's when Motley Crue kind of had a darker sound to them, and they were sort of playing around with this satanic imagery stuff, which at the time was kind of popular in the sense that it was drawing a lot of attention to people like Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath and Dio were getting a lot of, you would say, negative press, but any press is good press, and it was drawing a lot of attention to those bands. And I think Motley wanted to get a piece of that action, to use a quote from one of their songs. But I love this record. I wish they had stuck with this vibe for the rest of their albums. The next record, here on this record, you see the videos for this record. It's kind of dark. The makeup they're wearing is kind of, they're all in black. The makeup is kind of more evil, if you will, looking. And they got away from that. For the next record, Theater of Pain, it's like all bright colors. And, the cover of the album is bright. And their outfits, they're in pink and scarves and everything. And I wish they had stuck with this, because this is a really fantastic record. I love the instrumental intro thing in the beginning. The song Shout at the Devil is great. Looks Did Kill, classic. The video, classic video. Red Hot, Too Young to Fall in Love is also great. So a fantastic record. Nikki Sixx is a great songwriter. I just wish they had stuck a little bit more with this sort of, darker, slightly heavier style, instead of veering so off into the pop, pop metal world. Okay, number 3 on my list of my 5 favorite hair metal albums from 1984, Rats Out of the Cellar. Yeah, if you're a teenager in the 80s, you heard Round and Round. That was just all over MTV. I love this record. I love Warren DeMartini. I love the guitar sounds on this record. Stephen Pearcy has kind of a weird but kind of cool voice. Every song on that record is just great. It's produced really well. Beau Hill, I know that there was some tension between him and the band, but hey, my idea, man, he had great results. And the record that followed after this, Invasion of Your Privacy, is also fantastic. But this was my first Rat record, so this one I like the most. Wanted Man, cool song. I love the way that it starts with those backwards. I think those are guitar sounds. Video for that is really cool. Round and Round, maybe I've heard it too many times, but it's still a classic. When it comes on the radio, I crank it up. The Scene of the Crime is a cool one. In Your Direction is kind of this cool sort of ballady type of number with like an acoustic guitar in it. And I love Lack of Communication. I don't know why. I listen and hear other people, and they always say that that's like the worst song on the record. But I love that. I love that chugging riff at the beginning of it, and I love the chorus, the way it's sort of, lack of rhythmic and sort of a little monotone, but just a great record. And Rat will go on, in my opinion, to release a lot of great records after this. So, all right, next, number 4 for me from 1984, Dokken, Tooth and Nail. Yeah, look at that cover. The skull coming up, right? Is that heavy metal or what? A cool heavy metal, logo. As a kid, I was really into albums with lots of guitar on them. Rat, Warren DeMartini, and this album has a lot of guitar on it. George Lynch is just a fantastic guitar player. He's got a really unique guitar tone. The album is really kind of stripped down in the sense that there's not a ton of like guitar overdubs. It reminds me a little bit of like Van Halen. You've just got guitar, bass, and drums, and then the vocals. And I think what made Dokken work was also sort of their downfall. George was the guy that wanted to do heavier stuff, and Don was the guy that maybe wanted to do a little lighter stuff. That's the narrative. But to be honest with you, I've been listening to a lot of later Dokken stuff without George on it, and it's pretty heavy. So I don't know if that narrative is really true. But I think Don was the melodic guy, and George was the heavy guy. But for me, it all works, because there's some really great songs on this. I love Without Warning. That instrumental intro's got a pseudo like classical vibe to it. Tooth and Nail, I mean, just a barnstormer, and George's guitar solo in that is just killer, man. When Heaven Comes Down, Into the Fire, super cool, kind of dark riff. Just Got Lucky, maybe that's an example of Don's influence. It's kind of a poppy, melodic, metal thing. But to me, it's got that cool guitar line intro thing that's just awesome. And Alone Again, you know, what a cool ballad, and the video was super cool. And this was before, you know, ballads. Every band was doing a ballad, and it just got totally ruined. You know, where every band later in the '80s had to have a ballad, and the video had to be them on the tour bus and backstage, and but Alone Again totally works, totally epic. George, great guitar solo. Okay, so the last of my 5 albums, and this one I sort of discovered later in you know, my quest, my life in metal. If you will, all these other ones are from '83 or '84. This one from 1988, Cinderella's Long Cold Winter. Now, Cinderella is one of these bands that I think if they had maybe had a different name, they could have gone with that name, but if they didn't dress the way they did, you know, they get lumped in with the hair metal thing, and it's a stigma that they haven't been able to shake. And to me, Cinderella is a great hard rock, bluesy, remind me of the Rolling Stones, '70s vibe to them. You know, they really weren't sort of the goofy hair metal that you saw going on at this time, like in '88. You know, their first album is a little, has some silly stuff on it, but really by this time, and if you look at their picture on the back, you can clearly see that they're trying to get away from, you know, sort of the goofy, bright color pop metal thing. So I always liked Tom Kiefer's vocals. You know, he's got sort of a Brian Johnson vibe going on, and there's just a ton of, this album is fantastically produced. I don't know who produced this. I don't have my glasses on, but it's a fantastically produced record. Gypsy Road, killer riff. Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone. Yeah, it's a ballad, but I don't know. I like it. I just think it's a really great ballad with the piano and everything. Second Wind, I love that tune, the way it drops down in the chorus, you know. Coming Home is great. The Last Mile is great. The song Long Cold Winter is sort of like a bluesy number. It's just a great record. And I saw Tom Kiefer's band on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and I didn't really care for a lot of the bands on that cruise, but his band was my favorite. You know, he's got a big band, lots of guys in a band. It's really bluesy and rootsy. He does a bunch of Cinderella stuff, but it just totally works because, again, you know, the vibe to me on this is more Stones, you know, '70s rock. So, you know, it just, that album, that has aged for me very well, whereas a lot of late '80s metal stuff for me has not aged well. So, okay, that's it for me. 5 of my favorite hair metal records. Leave some comments below. What are your 5 favorite hair metal records? Do you like any of these records? Let me know. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you next time, remember to stay heavy and stay metal.